Hi everyone, thank you very much for stopping by and returning to the old world. If you've been watching the last couple of videos, hopefully you'll have noticed I've started playing a bit of Mordheim, a game I'm really enjoying. But one of the things when it comes to Mordheim is you do need a lot of terrain, a lot of ruined buildings if you're playing in the town itself. And I've kind of caught the bug a little bit when it comes to building terrain. Now, this isn't something I've particularly enjoyed doing previously. I've had a go with Warhammer 40,000, tried to build stuff around interesting shapes rather than just focusing on the classic corner pieces. Never really got very far though, never really found great enjoyment out of it and the final product. That is until now. So I decided after seeing one of the many YouTube videos floating around about terrain building just to give it one more go, but this time focusing a little bit more around the old world. And I was really pleased with the outcome. I can't really tell you exactly who I drew inspiration from. I've seen a lot of videos over the years. There was a particular aspect of one though which got me thinking around making it a bit more interesting to paint, etc. And kind of went from there. So having put a bit of a post on the channel, I decided I would track a little bit my process for building a building for Mordheim. Now, fully accept that there's other people out there far more skilled at this sort of thing than I am, and hopefully this will show you the bloopers, the errors, and the learning points that I found along the way. The first step for me was to decide what kind of building I wanted to do. In this case, I decided to do a house. It is pretty ubiquitous, something that's in a ruined state. I then needed to think about really how am I going to do the format of this? Is it going to be nicely cut precision job or something a little bit rougher around the edges? Rougher around the edges seems to lend itself perhaps to my more hickledy-pickledy style of painting and building stuff anyway, and also fits quite nicely within the theme of Mordheim, a ruined city of the damned. What you see before you is my first wall section. So where we get this big crease just here, that's going to be a fold. So I'm going to be able to bring things up like that and give it a little bit of support rather than rely on gluing lots of bits of cardboard together. The lollipop sticks, popsicle sticks, I believe called in the States, they are marked out where the floor is going to be. And actually you can see I have drawn some rough lines where I was thinking of putting the floor before making a final decision and slapping these down. The idea being is when the floor, which is going to be made of a thin card, gets put in place, these will give it a bit more support and hopefully make the whole thing a little bit more stable. As for windows and a door, I've marked out roughly where I wanted these to go in felt tip and then roughly cut them out. We go up to the top, you'll see evidence of a very crudely cut piece. I'll tidy them up maybe a little bit with the knife as we get through the process. But again, a battered old window seems to make sense for Mordheim. On this side, I've cut a bit of a slope, and for my other wall, now visible, that will allow me to put a ruined roof in place. So that's where I've got to so far. This is going to be the rough framework. I'm going to stick these two bits together, put them on a base, and then we'll be on to the next stage. Okay, so next stage is in. I've left those very rough cut windows in place, but I have now attached the floors. So this is made out of backing card. I bought this ages ago with a mind to doing some terrain stuff, but you can obviously get them on the back of pads. So if you've got it lying around, it's another free resource. I should say that the cardboard I'm using here for the main structure, that's just from a random box that was lying around. So these are 10 a penny. Any delivery you get is going to give you corrugated cardboard boxes. So it is pretty much a freebie resource. So with the floors in place, I've then added a few more lollipop sticks to form a bit of wood flooring. I'm going to continue over the rest of the wood flooring and get that planked effect. These have come from lollipops we've actually eaten. So again, there's no expense here. It's something I've already had lying around. Quite a collection of them because I tend to keep these just in case I want to build something. So really, apart from the cost of, well, this bit of card just here, and which forms this as well, actually, and the glue that I've used to put these together, this is so far costing me pretty much nothing. So a great little way of populating the tabletop whilst recycling a load of old junk that's lying around the house. So quick build update. The flooring is now all completely in, and we get to our first major learning point. So this is, again, it's just those lollipop sticks. I've filled gaps with a bit of the cuttings. I think it's probably fine. I am a little bit concerned, however, about this flex. I think if there's too many models set on the end of this, that could have a little bit of problem. So I probably need to think of some way of putting in a bit of a support. However, thinking ahead, I'm going to have to get in here with a paintbrush to, well, paint it, seal it, etc. As we go through the process. Having a support in there is going to make that a little bit difficult. So it might be a problem for future me to come back to if it is something that looks necessary. Roof's on. So I've used some of that card, again, the same as the base, the sort of pad backing card. I thought about putting it at the top here in the middle to open up space on either side. Opted against that because this allowed me to have there and there as points of contact, so it's giving me better support when it's glued down. This side you can see my approach to tiling. I've used some very basic thin card for this. I've cut thin strips and then at semi-regular intervals just made some small incisions upwards. They aren't all the same size. It's absolutely not a precision job. This sort of card, this came actually from a pack of soups, but could also be from cereal packets, etc. It's that kind of packaging cardboard. So it's something that a lot of people, I think, will have lying around or relatively easily available from various things in the cupboard as they get finished. So next stage for me is going to be to finish the roofs, and then we're on to sorting out some texture on the walls. So texturing the walls. This is for me going to be a two-stage process. The first one is just to add a little bit of interest. I've put actually what remains of my collection of these lollipop sticks around the side of the building. They're currently just waiting for the glue to go off on them. Now, this is going to eventually ape a sort of mock Tudor sort of style. Not fully. I don't have enough sticks to do that, and also, quite frankly, I don't want to make life too difficult for myself going forward. Now, I think it's important to comment on this. What I'm aiming to do is kind of suggest a detail, and that will come at the next stage as well when we show that off. What I'm not going to do is be putting an absolute barrel load of detail onto the model. There are people who will do that. There's much better train makers than me on YouTube, and they will go into all sorts of little bits of gribblies and details in both the build and the painting that will give you an absolutely fantastic model to look at. What I'm aiming for here is a model which looks pretty good, has a place on the tabletop, but one which is not going to be massively fiddly for me to make. Or, of course, importantly, paint as well. The painting method I'm going to be using is a little bit rough and ready, but we will see that when it comes to that point. So here we are, just a quick scan over the model as it stands at the moment. Roof tiles are done. I have bent up some corners around that just to give it, again, a little bit more life. I'm not too worried about these bits of corrugated card here, for example. We're going to cover those up imminently. These blasted out windows are going to be a little bit trickier. We'll see how we get on with those. But overall, starting to take shape. I think, have liked to have put a bit more detail on this wall here. But as I say, pretty much out of the wood now, so don't really want to go spending money. The whole point of this is I'm knocking stuff out of, broadly speaking, material I've already got. You can probably see in shot I do have a little bit of a lollipop stick left, but that's not really going to do anything by itself. So maybe just here, could go. Actually, it does. Maybe I'll stick that there. Right, I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to do some other stuff, and when I come back to it, we'll look at the next stage in putting some texture on the walls. So here we are a couple of days later and moved on to the next stage. What I've done here is covered the walls. So I've taken some PVA glue and liberally plastered it over the walls of the building. I've then put on some kitchen towel, or I've heard it described also as textured paper. Going over it roughly with a brush just to beat out some of the obvious designer textures from the original product. Didn't do a great job here, that's missed a bit, but it'll be all right, I hope, in the end. Now, if you were looking for a greater degree of neatness and precision, I think this is something that could definitely be done at an earlier stage. So putting it onto the walls, certainly if you're coming out of templates, you could put this over the templates, then cut out the doorways, the windows, etc. Doing it this way is a little bit more rough and ready, but I think that's fine for the look we're going to get, which is a sort of ruined building. So hopefully this will give us a bit of interesting texture when it comes to painting. Okay, that bit in there. There we go. Now, as well as texture, this does have a secondary purpose, and that is when all of this glue dries, this wrap will add a little bit more support to the walls. It'll make everything a little bit more stable, a little bit more structurally sound. This is the last as well of the building phase. I was tempted, if I turn this around, to look at, as I said, maybe some kind of support. We'll see how it goes after the next stage once we've got some initial paints in. And I was thinking about whether I put in a remnant of the back wall here to offer a little bit of cover for anything that's inside. I do think that might be a little bit fragile. It might need a little bit more thought than I'm willing to give it at this point in time. But the exposed back is going to be fine for, I think, the purposes of this build. So again, we're going to be letting all of this glue go off. It's going to take a while because I've used quite a bit of glue. And then we'll be on to the painting. And here we have it, the final product. So I've finished painting this off. So some terracotta over on the roof tiles. I've put some splashes of colour, doing different colours at each floor level, representing perhaps different rooms belonging to different families. All very sketchily put on with some sponge. I think it looks quite weathered, quite damaged. Coming off quite nicely. All of this being done, apart from the terracotta and the roof tiles, with some pretty cheap craft paints. Did go back over these wooden bits and the wooden bits on the outside with a homemade black wash. So again, it's some black craft paint, heavily watered down just to add a bit more effect. I did try and do a bit of black washing over the cream paint I've done on the outside. Went a little bit too far on reflection. This was pretty easy to fix though, because I just went back over it with some of the cream paint, dabbed again on the end of a sponge. So there we have it, the complete building ready to take its place on the table. Now, when I first started thinking about making a video, I put a post up on the old YouTube channel saying, this is what I'm thinking, what do you think? And I did get a comment talking about, yes, whilst there's a lot of terrain making videos out there on YouTube, there's not really that many making thematic playable boards. And that is, yes, far less common. However, I think, sadly, much like many other people probably watching this video, what I don't have the space for at home is specifically crafted boards. So yes, I can build a load of terrain, I can pop in a box, pull it out when I need it, but I don't really have the capacity to have lots of properly made boards floating around. So I've limited myself really to a couple, as you can see on the picture here, of ruined buildings. Now, this was built with the idea of using it for Mordheim. Equally, it could be used, of course, for Warhammer the Old World as well. Buildings are just a block, really, in Warhammer the Old World that are forcing you to maneuver around them. I did do some back of the envelope maths and think for a game of Mordheim on a 4x4 table, I'm going to need what? If I wanted to do a full board, 16 bits of terrain, something like that, in order to properly and densely cover the table. That is going to be quite time consuming and also quite difficult to, again, store that amount of terrain. I am, however, hopeful to at least be able to use some of this stuff, even if it means just take it to my local gaming store when we're playing games of Mordheim, to supplement the buildings that are available to other people and that come with the collections held by the gaming store itself. So you never know, you might see some of these on the tabletop in some of my battle reports in the not too far distant future. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's provided a little bit of inspiration. And for someone who, let's face it, is pretty cack-handed when it comes to the artistic side of the hobby, certainly the building terrain, I hope I've shown you actually that you can get a reasonably good effect fairly easily and actually whilst being reasonably haphazard with it. If you've enjoyed it, if you've got any comments you want to make, do let me know down in the comments. I will have a look at all of them, even if I don't necessarily respond to each and every one. I am returned to the old world. Have a great day.